All right, so just looking at order of operations with exponents, and not a lot really new here. We would have kind of covered a lot of these similar ideas in one of the first lessons from chapter 1. But first, a little bit more vocabulary I want us to be clear about. If you look at this expression here, 2 times 6 to the power of 8, the 2 is what we call the coefficient of the expression. So 2 times 6 to the power of 8, the key is the 2 has nothing to do with the power of 8. The 2 is not being repeatedly multiplied. And I know that because the 2 is not inside those brackets. The 8 is attached to just what you see by those brackets there. So the 8 just has to do with the 6. The 6 being, as we've mentioned before, that's the base of the power, and 8 is the exponent of the power. And again, all of this together, 6 to the power of 8, that's the power. So 2 times 6 to the power of 8. 6 to the power of 8 is the power, 6 is the base, 8 is the exponents, 2 is the coefficient. And while I'm not going to evaluate this, just keep in mind what this means. This means 2 times 6 times 6 times 6, 8 times. Make sure I count properly here. I think that's 8. Yeah, so that's what it means. 2 times all of this over here. OK, so again, the 2 has nothing to do with that power of 8. And so similarly, what I have down here, negative 3 to the power of 5. Again, we've seen things like this before. In this case, the coefficient is just the negative, or actually it's negative 1. So negative 1 is the coefficient. And again, it's not wrong to put a little 1 right here, although it kind of looks like 13 then, right? So if you are going to put a 1, then we need to put brackets around something. So we don't need that 1. So the coefficient is negative 1. Just like up above, the coefficient was 2. 3 is the base. 5 is the exponent. And so again, I'm not going to evaluate this, but what this means negative 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. A negative in front of 3 being multiplied by itself 5 times. And so keep in mind, if I put brackets around this, then the negative 3 would become the base. So it would be negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. And there would be no coefficient, or the coefficient would be positive 1. You can think of it that way. So as always, those brackets change things. All right, and so just a few examples of, evaluating expressions that have exponents. I got 3 different but similar expressions here. Let me focus on the first one. So in this case, negative 3 is the coefficient. 5 minus 2 is the base. But let's actually evaluate 5 minus 2. So that's 3. So next, again, this means negative 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. And so the negative part I can't worry about yet. The negative 3 that I've highlighted in yellow, I shouldn't deal with that yet. First, I need to think about what is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, which is 81. And now I can go 3 times 81, or negative 3 times 81. I know the answer is going to be negative. So negative 243 is what I get. And so keep in mind that negative 3, that coefficient of negative 3, I didn't actually calculate until the very end in this case. So the next example is almost the same. Instead of 5 minus 2, I have 2 minus 5. So maybe that'll make a difference. Maybe it won't. That said, I can just follow the same steps. 2 minus 5 is negative 3, not positive 3. Next, I need to think about what negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 is. I need to evaluate the power. Well, a negative times a negative times a negative is a negative. I just realized here I have made a mistake in the last question. Should I bother re-recording this video? Nah, I'll just go back and fix it. The last video, 3 to the power of 3 is not 81. That's 3 to the power of 4. My apologies. It's 27. If you sat there going, what is the teacher doing? I'm so confused. I apologize. So this should be 81. Hey, we all make mistakes. At least I caught it. And so over here, negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3, that is negative 27 times negative 3. All right, so again, in the end, I have a negative times a negative, so my answer will be positive. So changing the order that I was subtracting definitely made a difference in this case to my overall answer. It's positive 81 in the end. And so for the last one, I have the same numbers, but I've kind of changed some things around. And this is a distinctly different question, because that minus 3 I see at the end is not a coefficient. It's just take away 3. And I know that because if it was going to be times 3, then I'd have to have a time symbol somewhere, or I'd have to write it in the front. So this is the same values, but distinctly different from before. That said, same first few steps. First, what's 2 minus 5? Negative 3. Negative 3 squared this time. So now I have positive 9. But all this I'm subtracting 3 from. So again, in this case, that negative 3 is not a coefficient. It's just subtract 3. And so 9 minus 3 is obviously 6. All right, so again, easy to make little mistakes, as I just did. Most of the mistakes are actually usually made with negatives, like having the wrong sign somewhere. Just remember, when you have a power raised to an even number, you'll always have a positive answer. If you have a power raised to an odd number, if your base is negative, your answer will be negative.